Good afternoon, everyone. Let's open up our meeting, our Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the month of March for the city of Franklin. We will not vote on the minutes. We do not have a quorum. We'll delay that till a future date. I would ask Eric Stuckey to come forward. He has some comments to make. Eric, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take just a couple minutes to talk about a few topics. Just a second here. I'm going to turn off the volume on this computer. Okay. First of all, let me address the broader subject that we are all working through, not only as a community or a nation, but as a world in terms of the global pandemic, the COVID-19 outbreak. As a city, we are responding, we are adjusting, we are fully operational in everything that we are doing. We are modifying some of our operations to meet the needs of the community, but are doing it in a way that keeps our community safe, keeps services delivered, and keeps our city team members safe as well as we deliver those services. And we're focused on continuing to do that and meet the needs of the community while we take measures that are smart and protect us from exposure to the virus and the risk of community spread, which we know is a major focus for everybody these days. So that continues. Stay tuned. We're giving daily updates. The mayor, myself are doing brief video updates. We've got a website page dedicated to city information and also links you to CDC, State Health Department, Williamson County Emergency Management, Williamson County Health Department. So those are good sources, and make sure you're relying on good, reliable sources about the outbreak. And you can get city information at franklinTN.gov/COVID-19. So you can get information there, and we're updating that daily with new helpful information and links and data that way. So that brings me to the more specific topic that this meeting is about as we present budgets to you or department budget proposals to you. The budget landscape has changed dramatically in the last couple weeks with this outbreak, with the economic downturn that has taken place with it. We are retrenching and re-examining how we're handling the budget. The difficult thing for us is we don't see revenues till 2 or 3 months after they're incurred, and we are a local government that is particularly dependent on taxes that come from consumption. Local sales tax is over half of our general fund budget. The state shared taxes we receive, other taxes such as consumption tax or liquor tax, is all driven by consumption. When you look at our general fund budget as a whole, 73% of it comes from consumption-based taxes. In the last week to 2 weeks, people's consumption patterns have changed dramatically, and that will affect our revenue sources. So we recognize that, and the budget we bring forward to you in May is going to look different. It's going to be more of a baseline budget, a basic services, a core services maintenance of budget type of structure. I can't tell you today exactly what that's going to look like, but that will need to be our focus. This will not be unlike what we did and had to do in the face of the recession in 2008, 2009, 2010. Our team handled that wonderfully. We responded to the needs of the community. We kept city team members on board. We kept them trained, kept them ready to serve the community, and that will continue to be our focus. So I just offer those comments at the outset. I shared the same type of approach and comments with our leadership team this morning, and we are taking the actions now to be prepared for the balance of this fiscal year, the new fiscal year, and beyond, so that, again, we can continue to serve our community at a high level, albeit in a different set of circumstances than any of us would have expected a few weeks ago. So those are my comments, and just sets the tone of where we're headed with budget. And this is a unique meeting. We're doing this both as a regular type of meeting in person with at least 2 of our committee members and 2 others participating remotely, but we're also doing it as a electronic or virtual meeting that still provides community access but keeps us in an environment that's safe. And that's what we'll continue to do, and that's what you'll likely see in the weeks and months to come. We're looking for legislation that is, I think, going to be before the Senate this afternoon, this evening, that will provide that ability for local governments to operate in a revised way that, again, keeps us out of large public gatherings, but still has public business being conducted. So those are my comments. Again, I thank you. I'm going to head to my office where I will participate in this meeting remotely for the rest of the day. And thank you again for being here, and everybody for their patience as we make these modifications. Thanks.
Eric, thank you for the enlightening comments and to bring us up to date. The second item on the agenda, and we'll go directly into the agenda items. The second item on the agenda is budget presentation from the Streets Department.
One quick thing, let Angie give a quick update on people who may be participating at home or viewing this remotely. There are some instructions if they have public comments. We typically don't have a lot of public comments when we're producing or presenting departmental budgets, but if we do, Angie will walk you through that.
Thank you. So there's a couple of ways that you can make comments. If you are on the WebEx on a computer, you can make a comment in the comment section off to the right, or you can click raise my hand. If you are calling into this call and you want to make a comment or ask a question, there'll be times when Michael Walters Young will announce that it's time for a public comment. We will unmute everybody that is on a telephone number, and those folks then will be able to interject, say their name, where they live, and be able to make their comment. And then we will mute them back up, when that comment time is done. So we'll work through that just very carefully. If you don't want to comment those two ways, the other thing that you can do, you can call 615-550-6609. Somebody will answer the phone. They'll take your comment or question, bring it into this room, and we will share it with the committee at that time, or the staff, to be able to answer that question. You may also email your questions to recorder@franklintn.gov. That's recorder@franklintn.gov. And that phone number again, one more time, 615-550-6609. Thank you.
Angie, thank you for those comments and the instructions that we need to adhere to, or to anyone who wants to answer questions or ask questions. Thank you for that. Let's go then to item 2, which is the budget presentation from Streets. Steve, you're up.
Mr.
Hold on,
Chairman.
just wait. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to present our budgets for the street maintenance, the traffic division, the street fleet maintenance division, the state street aid budget, and a little bit later, the street stormwater portion of the budgets. Indeed, Eric had discussed briefly about the challenging times that we're in, and I certainly would agree that in light of everything going on in the world today, that this seems minuscule to many. However, it does give us an opportunity to just kind of go through our budget and lay it out as we saw it even months prior. So we realize that things are going to change, and I'm normally very, very passionate about what we do and this budget in general. I may have to scale back just a little bit here. So with that, I'm going to get started. So as we outlined, we're going to just kind of look at the purpose of the department, the organizational chart, the base budget request, personal operations, and capital. And then we'll discuss briefly the program enhancements, and then we'll close it out. So we are committed to serving selflessly alongside our brothers and sisters throughout the Public Works Department. We strive to maintain, improve, and preserve Franklin's infrastructure for its current residents and future generations. As we take a look at the org chart, you'll see that the org chart is very similar to the way it was laid out a year ago. So we're going to move forward to the personnel budget. The staffing level for 2020 was 40 employees, and the request for staffing level in 21 is 42 employees. And we'll kind of lay that out as we get into some of the program enhancements. Up next, we're going to discuss the operations portion of the budget. You're going to see just a slight increase of $21,038. As we look down at the repair and maintenance supplies, you're going to see a decrease in $20,000. You're going to see a property and liability increase of about $22,643. You're going to see about a $15,000 increase in the overall budget in just that area. As I kind of lay out the budget, I typically look for $5,000 thresholds. And in this case, we have the safety supplies that's going to increase by $5,000. That is directly impacted by the Pilgrimage Festival. So a year ago, we actually performed some of the barrel cones, setting up the traffic control, if you would, in-house, but we had hired it out, rented the equipment, and it was about half that cost. So this year we decided to just go ahead and make the purchase of the materials, and we'll continue to work with fire and police to fine-tune that closure. You're going to see an increase of employee programs of about $7,000, and that $7,000 directly impacts our training in-house. Moving into our program enhancements, we're going to ask for a reclassification, which is pretty minuscule, and a vehicle replacement program, or enhancement rather. The big item on the table for these enhancements is McCatcher Northwest. So as we consider our maintenance, gearing up for maintenance of McCatcher, we have a level of service that we want to provide. We want to be consistent with the level of service that we provide on McCatcher between Highway 96 and Franklin Road. This enhancement helps us gear up for that maintenance on the new McCatcher between Hillsborough Road and Highway 96 West. As we move forward to look at some of the equipment enhancements, you'll see that there's a skid steer of $48,400. When we put this presentation together and started talking about the enhancement, that skid steer was actually operating. It currently is no longer operating, and it is essential to the some of the duties at the compost facility. We're requesting a replacement tractor brush hog of $137,000. Again, that is about an 18-year-old piece of equipment that we've put about $70,000 in it so far. You're going to see a $60,000 line item for the Windrow Turner. The Windrow Turner, you may recall that it was funded a year ago, but when we went to make the purchase, it had increased by about $20,000, and we just could not absorb that in our current budget, and so we decided to move on and not make that purchase. Additionally, you're going to see a trailer-mounted pull-behind leaf vacuum to the tune of $78,500. In parentheses, it is a new item, but the reality of it is it is similar to the equipment that we currently have in-house. The difference with this particular trailer is that it's self-contained and can handle 30 cubic yards of material. And that helps us win in the Cool Springs area, certainly between the time of Thanksgiving and Christmas, when it takes us an hour and a half to get from some of the developments in Cool Springs East back to the compost facility. Now, you're going to see this item or something similar come up again when we get over into the stormwater fund. Are there any questions regarding the street department maintenance budget? None? Okay, we're going to move on to the traffic division. So we went into 20 with a staffing level of 10. We are requesting one full-time employee to take that to 11. We'll discuss that when we get to the program enhancements. In our operations budget, you're going to see we went up 1%, or about $5,337. That increase is in the machinery and equipment, and it is $5,000 increase, and it directly impacts the streetlight program within downtown, the LED streetlight program. As we move into the program enhancement request, we're looking for 2 requests in this fund. One is a $50,627 request for a striping technician. The other is a $34,000 request to do some work to our current smelter trailer. So we're not asking to replace the trailer, just to change out the smelters. The striping technician, some of the additional work that we've taken on was some interdepartmental sign support for B&S, Solid Waste, Parks Department, and we just want to continue to be able to support those other departments, and so this helps us win there. Additionally, as the full board heard, there was some a wayfinding project brought to you all back about a month and a half ago, and this particular position is would be required to be able to continue to support that wayfinding effort. Additionally, this individual would support our striping program. Any questions regarding traffic?
You mentioned 2 employees.
Wait, babe. Let me get you on. All right, go ahead, Miss Pam.
Okay, you mentioned 2 additional employees for your, on your enhancements, and one of those would be a striping technician, correct?
So in the traffic division,
I gotta switch back and forth.
Just
Go ahead.
list what they would do.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So in the traffic division, we're actually requesting 1 striping technician. That is just to support our current staff.
And the,
So that individual would help us with the wayfinding. It would also help us with the detail work for striping major roads like Mallory Lane, a Mallory Lane improvement that we just done this summer, and then additionally help us to produce signs.
okay. Current 40, am I looking at the right one? Wait a minute.
So if I can jump back to the street department, I think that may be to the regular maintenance. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I can jump back there.
No, I'm good now. I see it's 1 for this one.
Okay, thank
Thank
you,
you.
ma'am. So if there are no additional questions for the traffic division, I'd like to move on to the fleet maintenance division. So in this division, we're carrying 10 into 21, and we currently have 20 employees. You're going to see another huge increase of 1% and or just less than $1,000. And you're going to do a little math here in your head, and you're going to realize it doesn't add up. But our property and liability costs decreased by about $5,000, and our machinery and equipment increases $7,000 respectively.
So just to know, good afternoon, Michael Walters Young, Budget and Strategic Innovation Manager. Just to note on that, you'll see throughout the budgets, as has been the case, that property and liability costs shift depending upon the year. And so what we do every year when it's bid out, HR assigns those costs, our risk department. And in this case, property and liability costs for the fleet maintenance division have gone down. In other places, they go up, depending upon how we're able to package our liability as well as our umbrella policy costs. Just that's why sometimes they increase, sometimes they decrease. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And so just even that slight difference is just some shift in the overall department or division fund. So I'd like to move on to our program enhancements for the fleet department, and you're going to see the same old boring pickup truck that we're requesting a replacement for. And the real takeaway for this particular presentation is the heavy-duty lifts that we are requesting. We do currently have 2 sets of lifts in the division. This would be a 3rd set. Where these really come in handy for us is when we have fire apparatus or solid waste trucks in the shop that are waiting on a piece of equipment to do the full replacement. And we have to carry the lifts into the parking lot or into another area of the shop. Are there any questions regarding fleet?
Not from me.
Carry on.
Okay. I'd like to move on to the state street aid and just talk briefly about that. So in 2020, we carried, we got approval of $3,800,000. We're asking for a slight increase of $3,819,749. And the takeaway in this fund is that you would see that we're fully supporting the sidewalk gap money at the board's decision there. And we have set aside $1,145,600 in our pavement preservation. Now, the pavement preservations we've talked about in the past, and you're aware of the study that we recently done and evaluated every street that we had. You have seen the fog seal that we have done around town as a benchmark, and perhaps even since December of this year, you've seen us out and about doing some crack fill throughout the city. While it's unattractive, for sure, the ultimate goal is to be able to extend the life of our pavement 5 to 7 years with each one of these preservation techniques, which the ultimate goal is to move it from a 12 to 15 year replacement cycle to a 30-year cycle. And we are working to try to do that judiciously. Yes, sir.
One thing I'll add, as Eric mentioned, we're going to be watching revenues very closely. This is one which could prove to be uniquely interesting, as this is a consumption-based tax. It's the gas tax is the primary driver. You subsidize this with $0.015 of the property tax, as well as plus $250,000 for sidewalk gaps through the Invest Franklin initiative. But that baseline of $2.7 million does come through consumption, and it's a fixed amount. As gas prices are dropping, you may see consumption increase when and if more people transport and go different places. We would expect to see this drop momentarily, but this is one of those areas where as we go forward with the fiscal 21 budget, we may be revisiting the amount of money that's available for resurfacing and pavement preservation, depending upon where we think revenues are going to come in. This is already built very conservatively because the gas tax increase is now fully implemented, and this is a 0.5% increase on overall consumption. That's our estimate as of today.
Hold on.
So,
Wait, sorry.
So instead of the anticipated decrease, there could be an anticipated increase based upon the lowering of the gas price, and we anticipate additional traveling. That probably, with everything shut down, probably doesn't happen for the next couple of months for sure, so.
Correct. This is, I pause to mention that comment because it's a uniquely, gas tax is directly reflective of consumption, just like our mixed drink taxes and just like our local sales taxes. So a lot of that we know we're going to see an impact for in the next, or shall I say, in the from now until the end of the fiscal year, which of course we won't know for several months after that exactly the impact. Traditionally, if things were normal, when the gas prices drop, consumption goes up. So this is one of those revenues. The takeaway, this number more than likely will be impacted when we present to you the fiscal 21 budget, both initially in May and then potentially again as the year moves forward.
Any other questions? All righty, we'll move on. So I'd like to just share with you all our 3-year vision for the department. And one thing I would like to point out for future program enhancements is you don't see any new equipment in the parentheses. Everything is a replacement. And so as our fleet continues to age, there's just a need to replace that. And the reality of that is we can probably survive and continue our level of service if we're not replacing pickup trucks. If we're not replacing dump trucks, that's a little bit more difficult in some of the platform work. But as we move into the next enhancement and we start talking about our equipment, that's a very different story and something that we certainly want to remain on top of. And so you're going to see at least 2 pull-behind leaf vacuums in 2022 and 2023. Again, we touched base on a leaf vacuum earlier in this presentation. We're going to touch base again on a self-contained unit that helps us win in the stormwater division. But these are pieces of equipment that, depending on the service we're providing at that time, are essential. You'd notice in here that we also have a backhoe, an additional brush hog in 2023, and then the infrared truck in 2024, which has become an essential piece of equipment to help us win daily in the street department. I'd like to touch base just briefly on the personnel request. We will be asking for a reclassification potentially in 2022, and by the time we get to 2023, we'll be looking for the funding of a traffic signal technician 1. And that'll just support the increase of the signalized intersections and the continued support of the lighting within downtown, walking trails, those that are owned by the city. Are there any questions regarding any of the street department operations budget before we move to stormwater?
I have a question that somebody online would like to make. Catherine. Okay. Alderman Berger? You may make your comment. Oops, wait. Alderman Berger, go ahead and make your comment.
Hold on. You hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Oh, you can? Okay. I didn't think I was muted. I've already had my question answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve,
That-
thank you for that presentation on the streets. Are we going into stormwater now?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'll start.
Okay.
The next budget for your consideration will be the Stormwater Fund. As has been our pattern and our practice, we'll be dividing this presentation. There are two divisions, as you know, one under Streets, as you've seen the organizational chart for, which Steve will cover here in about 30 seconds. And then Jonathan Marston from Engineering will come into the room to present the Engineering Division. And then you'll turn it back to me to present a couple of different rate increase proposals that we would like you to start chewing on as we move our way into fiscal 21. So without further ado, Mr. Grubb.
All righty, I'm back. Okay, so the outline, very much the same as our street department budget. We're going to talk about the purpose. We'll touch briefly on the org chart. We'll go over our base budget request, program enhancements, and then I'll get out of your hair. So I'd like to start off with the street stormwater maintenance and inspection divisions exist to ensure that the citizens of Franklin receive a properly functioning, high-quality infrastructure. We take pride in our workmanship from start to finish. Our quality control inspectors expect no less from private contractors working within the city rights-of-way and/or in new development. The org chart at this time is virtually unchanged. The base budget request for personnel is the same staffing level in 21 as it was in 20. You will see a slight increase in the operations budget for the Stormwater Division streets portion, and that increase is about 5% or $38,396, and that is mostly impacted by the administrative services managing the fund. So as we move into the program enhancements, I really have two big takeaways here. Of course, again, we have the boring pickup trucks. We have two of those that we're proposing replacement. We do have a mini excavator, $73,500, that we really need to get replaced. It's an essential piece of equipment for the day-to-day operations in the street department. And that is about an 18-year-old piece of equipment. It was original to the fund and is just simply wore out. The other program enhancement, which has a high ticket cost, if you would, $209,850, is a self-contained leaf vacuum. This would indeed be additional equipment to our fleet. We currently have two operating already. There is the need for a third unit. If this particular unit gets funded, then we would be able to remove the program enhancement out of the maintenance division. And not only would we be able to eliminate the enhancement that we asked for in the street maintenance side, but we'd also eliminate one of the leaf vacuums we're setting inside of our 3-year plan for replacement. So looking at our 3-year outlook for vehicle and equipment requests within the Stormwater Division, we'll be seeking funding a storm drain vacuum in 2022. Again, that is a high-ticket item, and it is original to the Stormwater Fund from implementation or inception, rather. We're back to a boring pickup truck replacement in 23 and the need to replace one of our 3 street sweepers in 2024. That said, this does not just sum up the Stormwater Division, but rather the entire street department. As a maintenance division, we intend to expand in a way that keeps up with developmental growth. We will continue to offer the best services possible to our vibrant community. We are committed to training and developing staff members that pay attention to the details. It is our desire to stand out among industry leaders for preventative maintenance. And if there are no questions for me, that will end my portion of the presentation.
I just want to say thank you very much. Our streets, people are very pleased for what I hear in the community. They love the idea that leaves can be sucked up at the curb, and we need to continue those kind of services if possible. And
Yes,
thank you
ma'am.
all so much.
Thank you.
My thanks to you too for the presentation. As usual, factual, accurate, and to the point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, next.
Next, we're going to give a moment for Mr. Grubb to exit and allow Mr. Marston to come in. So if you'll just... Sure. You go.
We are going to unmute the other call-in users to make sure they don't have any questions right now.
So this is an opportunity for any of the other call-in users to ask questions, if you would have them at this time. All righty.
Jonathan, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go through the engineering section of the stormwater section of engineering department first. And the purpose of that division within our department is to handle all the requirements from Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation and the EPA as a part of our Phase 2 MS4 program. And we have a permit through the state of Tennessee which allows the city itself to discharge waters or discharge into the waters of the state. So think of that as we do construction site inspections, we do public education and things like that out of the engineering department. Our org chart remains unchanged. It's 6 employees dedicated to stormwater.
Do you have volume on your computer?
It should be off.
We're getting a little bit of an echo.
You can turn the volume completely off. I don't need it. Okay, we'll try that.
I think that'll work.
So again, 6 staff members. Most of those are stormwater quality specialists who do inspections and and maintain our permit requirements. And I hear the little bit of feedback as well myself.
It's up there.
It's on.
Go ahead, continue.
Thank you. So the difference between our approved budget in 2020 and our proposed budget is very minimal. It's about 5%, just increased cost in personnel and expenditures towards retirement contributions and things like that. No major changes there. And I'll get to the stormwater, the performance enhancement request. The 2 changes we are asking for is a couple of reclassifications for high-performing members in the stormwater department. Uniquely, one of our entry-level water quality specialists also has an engineering background, and she's available to sit for her PE whenever they do actually hold the test. So this will be our first PE engineer dedicated to stormwater in the city of Franklin, which will be very exciting when she gets the PE passed. And we also are looking to promote one of our high-performing team members as a water quality specialist too, so that'd be the next step in her career. The operations budget, again, is about 5%, actually it's a little less than 5%. It basically remains unchanged in operations, so we're still pretty much doing the same thing we were doing with the same number of employees. The capital budget's where you're gonna see a huge change, and the big thing is we used to fund several projects a year out of our stormwater capital funds. We no longer do that, and you now prioritize that as a part of the overall budget process with capital improvement or capital investment projects. The 1.2 million you see there today is to go ahead and purchase the Battle Avenue properties that we already had in the budget, and we already purchased one of those projects. Or one of those properties, excuse me. The performance enhancement request, we've already gone over the 2 personnel. The 2 operational changes would be this, an agreement between the City of Franklin and the Cumberland River Compact. It's more of an education, public education component. It's actually something that's already in the works a little bit, but we're waiting to this budget year to actually fund that. And the other one is just a customary vehicle replacement. It's one of the older vehicles in our fleet. It's about 15 years old. Doesn't have many miles, but it gets a lot of city miles local. So we're looking to potentially replace that when the time is right, and we believe that time is coming soon. And I'll let Michael jump into any rate structures if there's not, or the rate structure questions, if there's not any questions for engineering.
Does anyone have any questions? Michael?
All right. So, if you remember back to last month, we came before you at work session to update you on work that staff had been doing on stormwater rates. We looked at a couple of different rate proposals and presented those to you then, and we have refined some of them for your consideration today. As a reminder, we have looked at 3, 5, and 10-year scenarios within the fund. We have assumed a base 0.5% growth in revenues, which is solely new customers being added to our stormwater system. A 5% net growth in personnel costs that assumes adding no new personnel to the fund. A 2% net growth in operations, and regular equipment replacement. The other aspect of these scenarios is that we maintain at least $1 million in fund balance for state requirements as well as for emergencies. The one scenario which we have dropped for your consideration of presentation was the no increase expense shift scenario. If you remember, we presented a increase in rates, and we also presented a scenario where we would hold the line on the fee, but shift some of the costs which were being charged off to the stormwater fund to the general fund. We felt, we took the advice and the feeling from work session that there was not sufficient interest on behalf of the full board to continue developing that scenario at this time. As a reminder of what this looks like if we do nothing before I start, the status quo, keep in mind that this fee has been in existence since fiscal 2004 and has never been increased. If we continue with our the assumptions we've made, which is no rate increase, 0.5% increase in growth of the system, a 5% increase in personnel, a 2% increase in operations, and at regular equipment replacement, the fund will be in a true deficit position by fiscal 2024. This has spurred us to point out to you that action needs to be taken somewhere. So the first option we have considered is a 5% increase annually. This would allow us to meet all of our thresholds. $1 million in fund balance at minimum, allow us to replace capital, and then allow us to maintain personnel and operations. If you go into the detail, you see on this slide, which I've expanded out here, your current rates are that base rate of $3.65 per ERU, $274 per month for small residential, and $438 for large residential. A 5% increase in 2021 would be an increase per month of 14 cents for the small residential, 22 cents for the large residential, and 18 cents for the commercial, or an annual increase of $1.64, $2.63, or $2.19 respectively. If you looked at this in terms of a 5-year plan and you did 5% annually, similar to the 5-year rate plans that we've developed for water and sewer, you can see that by the end of 2025, the gross increase would be a $9 increase in small residential, a $14 increase in large residential, and a $12 increase in commercial over the span of those 5 years. That is one possibility for you to consider. We've developed another one for your thoughts. Again, we're not going to advocate for anything today, but we thought that you should see this because we ran the numbers. And that is, what if we actually tried to open up the Stormwater Fund to afford funding capital again? There's detailed information within your packets and within the online attachments. The summaries of the first 5 years are up on the screen. If you had a 35% increase in the rates in 2021 and a 30% increase in 2022, you could start to afford between $1 million and $1.5 million of engineering capital per year moving forward. You'd also still be able to maintain $1 million worth of fund balance on an annual basis. From a rate standpoint, the next slide shows that the overall increase in rates would be on average a 16% increase over the time of the next 5 years. And you would see increases certainly more significant than what you're currently having. But a 35% increase in the rates would go from a $2.74 charge per month to a $3.70 charge per month. For the large residential, it would go from $4.38 in 2021 to $5.91 in 2021, and commercial $3.65 to $4.93. The reason we put this proposal in front of you was because the overall increase and net effect is not terribly dramatic, even though we're talking about large percentages. We believe that over the course of 10 years, this would enable you to raise roughly $18 million within the Stormwater Fund over the course of that time frame to fund stormwater-related projects. As of the CIP that you looked at last fall and summer, you had approximately $20 to $24 million worth of stormwater or stormwater-related projects in that 10-year window. So you'd be able to fund a significant portion of those projects and fund some of them sooner in a way that they would not be competing with other general fund dollars. Moving forward, we are probably going to be recommending some type of fee increase, at least in fiscal 2021. Now again, as you heard Eric say at the beginning of this meeting, the entire fiscal 21 budget is under consideration, and so we'll just see. Prudently, we need to begin increasing the rates. The question becomes one of when and to what degree. But we wanted to get the capital proposal out in front of you as well so you could begin to see this. Should the committee, when it reconvenes fully, want to take this further back to the board or to work session or chew on it for a while and have us run some other things, we are more than happy to do that. But we wanted to make sure that you had this in front of you and could see some of the detail as to the relative impact or relative non-impact of rates increasing to that degree.
Any questions from anyone on the presentation?
Question. As we move in this direction with the 35%, we're looking at this fund being able to take care of itself. I mean, the ratepayers will be able to fund the fund that will take care of the issues that would be related to the stormwater. Or will there be general fund necessary, maybe I'm not getting it all clear, to support this?
It depends what you define the issues.
Yeah.
We believe that a 5% increase on an annual basis are sufficient to maintain the fund in its current context as it was designed, which was as an operational fund to maintain our stormwater system within the city of Franklin. So that, what we consider modest rate increase on an annual basis, will fund your personnel, will fund equipment replacement, and keep you with a sufficient fund balance. This larger proposal would enable you to take on funding of capital projects.
That's what I'm trying to get at. What's the best way to help support that?
That would be a larger rate increase.
Okay.
If you consider that proposal, I think you are best served by raising a higher amount sooner. That's why we structured this sort of 35% in 21 and 30% in 22, and then back to 5.
Yeah.
So you basically
Build
you build it up
And
and
then
you
level it
establish it, and then you level it back to the operations that you need. As with all of this, one of our recommendations has been and will continue to be the need to have 5-year plans. And just like we do with water and sewer, we would re-examine and go back and advise of what is needed and when. And certainly if we didn't have to increase that far, we would not do so.
Well, we definitely have something to consider.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
Michael, just I guess a comment on my part. We're not gonna cover all of the stormwater capital projects out of this funding. I mean, we're looking, I can think of one that we were looking at that was $17 million. And so if that's the case, if we look at that, and we look at, I'm not sure where we cut off, where it becomes out of the stormwater versus where it goes into the 10-year capital plan and it's supported by the general fund or whatever it's supported by. So, I think there's quite a bit of mulling over on this right here. I don't disagree with the marginal increases that we've got that maintains where we are. And I think we need to maintain the $1 million in that particular fund ongoing. But that's not going to do what we need to get done, I don't think. And I'm sitting here thinking, a lot of that depends on what happens over the next couple of months, whatever. But thank you for presenting this, and I think it's important that we understand, the full board understands, that the public understands what we're trying to do with this, with the rate increases, which are just to maintain the level of services as we currently have them with the 5% increase. Next.
We'll jump into engineering and Todd
Go-
next, and I'm
go
just
ahead.
waiting for Michael Walters Young to pull up the presentation for me. And I'm very thankful he did all the accounting stuff on stormwater. I'll stick to the engineering. So again, I'm Jonathan Marston with Assistant Director of Engineering, and I actually supervise the capital project section and the Traffic Operations Center, and I'm here for Paul Holzen today. The purpose of and we're gonna go through our standard outline for our projects, but the purpose of our department is we're broken up into 4 divisions. We've already talked about our stormwater division. We've also got our development services team and our capital projects team, which is basically our general engineering team, who review either public infrastructure or private infrastructure to make sure we're providing a high-quality product to the citizens of Franklin. We also have our Traffic Operations Center. So with our streets department, they help do our maintenance and our field work. And our operations is exactly what they say. Our operations center deals with signal timings, projects, things at a high level to keep traffic moving as best we can. And our organization chart consists of 20 employees total, and 6 of those on that org chart are stormwater, which we've already discussed. So 14 of those are the remaining employees, and nothing has changed from that org chart to this year's org chart. The base budget has increased, for personnel has increased some for both, well, actually just for engineering, it has gone down a little bit for TOC. There's no changes shown in that for the existing personnel, just normal increases in costs for personnel, retirement contributions, things like that we see fluctuate on a yearly basis. We do have some personnel performance enhancement requests that I'll get into a little bit later when we get to all the performance enhancement requests at one time. We have 2 for engineering and 2 for TOC. For operations, the engineering's base budget actually decreased, and for the Traffic Operations Center, it increased a bit, and the increase is all attributed on the TOC side to the recent Cool Springs Transportation Study that you guys approved a little later last year. We've just really started that process, so the bulk of that money for that contract will be spent in the upcoming year. So since we've already approved that project, that's where you're seeing roughly $200,000 increase is for that specific study. Capital, we don't have any capital in engineering department. Traffic Operations Center does have capital. Most of these projects, as you can see there, are grant projects, either 80-20 grants through either the MPO or State of Tennessee. That's how we help develop our fiber network, our traffic monitoring cameras, and a lot of our advanced systems we do with our Traffic Operations Center. The one thing that is not grant funded in that list is the annual intersection upgrades for $250,000. That's something that's been very typical for the city to fund. That lets us do maybe one signal project a year or do multiple smaller upgrades to different signals throughout the city of Franklin. And the performance enhancement request, so in total, engineering has 3. A reclassification of staff engineer 2 to a 3, that's a high-performing PE who's a senior level member, and we'd like to promote them and help them move forward through their career, and they're showing very good promise. Capital project inspector, with this last year's budget, we finally hired a capital project inspector who's dedicated to just our public infrastructure projects that you fund through the board, through the capital improvement program. And we're looking to add an additional person that has been successful thus far. We still firmly believe that with some assistance outside for specialty services, that we can do inspection of our projects cheaper in-house. So that's what we're proposing there, is one additional inspector to help with the workload, because right now I've got one inspector doing a lot of that. And the third, very much like stormwater, is a vehicle replacement for an old vehicle that's approaching 15 years old. The Traffic Operations Center's got a few more requests in there. The first 2 are just simple reclassifications. So our entry-level position in our TOC is a TOC operator. She's been with us several years now and looking to promote that position to a more field-level position to actually get out into the signal cabinets and work with that. The person who currently does that is actually starting to help manage projects. So we would like to move him towards a new position and we've had this in our past, with actually managing signal projects and some of the ITS projects, because we have a very limited staff in our TOC. Our TOC's only 4 people. The next 3 are actually studies. Traffic study data service, you may have heard and you may not have heard of streetlight data, but it's and I won't get too in-depth here, but it's allows us to do better planning and use actual live data that's already out on the street from cell phone services, things like that are already being collected. It's anonymized data, but it lets us see what the performance of the network is in the area. That's publicly available data, but there is a service to actually help correlate that data. So we are asking for a request there. An annual subscription for that service is $50,000. But it lets you do, long and short is, if someone says, how many people are driving through a subdivision, are coming from what general area? So this takes a percentage of the people driving by and gives you a generalization of, you actually know where that traffic is coming from and going to. So it helps us make smarter decisions about traffic signal timing, about improvements that we make, how to focus those improvements. And it's actually using real hard data versus coming and saying, we're making an assumption here, or we're making an educated guess here. It helps us back some of those decisions. The second one is a dedicated traffic calming budget. In last year's budget, there was approximately $30,000 in the street department budget for a traffic calming program, and we go through that very quickly. As you can imagine, there's a lot of requests for speeders through neighborhoods. Can we put speed humps up?
Yeah.
Do speed feedback signs. Sometimes we'll do crosswalks with this, marked crosswalks like the one at Boyd Mill Avenue out at Jim Warren Park. We did that with these funds. So we're asking for $100,000 this year, because we've got a pretty significant backlog of projects that we've worked with citizens through to move some of those along, and that number could obviously fluctuate as the board sees fit. The final request here is a study of the Murfreesboro Road corridor. You're going to hear from planning this afternoon, and one of the things they're looking to do in the upcoming year's budget is study the Murfreesboro Road corridor roughly from I-65 to Mack Hatcher, about what that could look like as it redevelops over time, and what the vision for that area is. Of course, Emily will tell you much more about that in a much better way than I just did. But to piggyback off that, if we're going to go ahead and plan what the future vision for that corridor and how it's going to grow in the future, we want to look at the transportation component of that too. And a big part of that is to look at some of the existing bottlenecks, such as the interstate interchange at I-65. It just makes sense. If you're going to study what that corridor could be or what it will be in the future, let's study the transportation network as well. And I'll take any questions.
You are absolutely correct. A lot of our citizens are requesting neighborhood common help.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm glad to see that we are addressing this, even though it's an enhancement to add more. And we'll see how our budget proceed, that we're able to do this to assist a lot of our neighborhoods.
You're absolutely correct. We do get a lot of requests, and this would allow us to address a few more in a more timely fashion.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Staying on that same subject, what determines who gets the traffic calming device
So
or the speed bump?
Our true traffic calming program right now is based on speeds, and it's also based on the level of traffic. So it has to meet certain thresholds to get both of those. And it has to meet both thresholds, or in some cases, there are some extenuating circumstances where the board may choose to do those, even though it may not meet a threshold. But we do have a traffic calming policy in place, but we're also looking to revise that, because it's been about 10 or 15 years since we revisited that program, and we'd like to make that a little more streamlined.
No, I can understand, I can see the crosswalk at Jim Warren Park. Perfect example of what I see from that particular standpoint. I've got to tell you, Pearl said something different from what my thinking is.
That's okay.
The streets belong to 80,000 people.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, I mean, that's what I look at when I see somebody asking for a street calming device or a speed bump or something other. They're denying the other 79,950 people that want to use that in order to have that street calming device there. I think we need to, if you're going back and looking at that and revising that, and we haven't looked at that in 10 years, I think that would be what I would want to look at as far as how we determine where those speed bumps go.
And some of the qualifiers we do now is we will never place them on or propose like a speed hump or smaller devices that are, kind of intrusive in nature. We never propose those on like arterial roadways that are meant to move traffic through the community. Sometimes we will propose those on, and most of the times we propose those on residential streets that are being used as cut-throughs, as a back road to some other area. A good example of that is one program we're working on right now with the neighborhood, Westfield Estates. So rather than come down Hillsborough Road and go out 96 West, people are driving down Del Rio and cutting through Alexander Drive and Westfield Drive. So that's where we try to focus these things. We never do them on the roads that are truly meant to move the majority of the city's traffic. That's one of our initial criteria. We won't even look at something. So if someone said, hey, can we do speed humps on Murfreesboro Road? That's
Oh,
obviously
no,
never
no,
gonna happen.
no. It's neighborhoods.
It's neighborhoods, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Michael, do you, what have we got next? Do I need to look at my agenda or you need to look at yours?
Planning.
You look at our agenda.
There we go. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next will be the planning and sustainability budget. So we'll give a chance for Jonathan to leave and for Emily to come in.
Is she gonna come in or video in?
Is Emily ready?
Is you a video person?
I'm not sure.
Emily, if you're in the hall, we're ready.
There
Look
she
at
is.
that. In technology, wonderful.
Just speak it.
You
Just
just say-
speak it.
Emily, if you're in the hall, we're ready.
You're permitted to walk in.
Yes. Pearl and I will say this is probably the most unique meeting that we've ever attended.
Yes. And we're quite senior, as you know, so we're always learning new
And I've
things.
attended one or two, 3 or 4.
All right. am I good? Are you flipping for me? or
I'm
am I
flipping.
Okay, cool. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily Hunter, the Director of our Planning and Sustainability Department here, the city. I'm just going to run through a couple things as usual, the same outline as normal, just kind of jumping into the purpose of the department, and then we'll get into some of the budget requests. But as you know, the Planning and Sustainability Department strives to protect and enhance our built and natural environment by providing a comprehensive vision for future growth, protection of historic and natural resources, and excellent planning services for our businesses and residents. We work with the Planning Commission to identify long-range initiatives and work towards planning efforts to help solidify our plan of action on those. And then we process annexation requests and current development applications in order to continue quality growth. And we provide assistance to a number of commissions, including the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, our Historic Zoning Commission, the Civil War Historical Commission, and the Sustainability Commission, and of course, the Planning Commission. We had a pretty successful year, we think, in the last budget year, and we adopted the zoning ordinance with the help of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and Planning Commission. We appreciate everybody's hard work on that. It's web-friendly and interactive. We also adopted a new version of our subdivision regulations, which had not been comprehensively updated since 1966. We promoted three planners internally, and we hired 3 new planners. We reviewed 200 land development applications. We completed a update for the Hinchyville National Register nomination. We completed an online development map and created a historic property address map for the public. We created some new online submittal systems for historic zoning and our annexations that are starting to ramp up. We adopted an increased planning review fees structure and included a new annexation review fee. As you know, we also held a referendum in October, and we annexed 26 properties by referendum in the Goose Creek area. And we held a large planning event called Planapalooza back in February that was part of the zoning ordinance update. And then we also hosted our State Planning Association conference here in Franklin for the first time ever. Some of the goals for the upcoming year are to implement, monitor, and evaluate the new zoning ordinance and our subdivision regulations. We want to make sure that they're effective in that implementation period and kind of troubleshoot where they're not and make changes as necessary. We will plan to update the preservation plan and create a Murfreesboro Road Small Area Plan. We are in the process of conducting an annual review and update to Envision Franklin, and this specifically also addresses single-family lot width and lot size policies. We're going to continue to concentrate on educating both staff and our elected and appointed officials in regards to planning trends and good best practices. And we want to focus on the improvement of our workspace and technology in the Planning and Sustainability Department, since that is an ever-evolving part of planning. The organization chart is the same as it has been for the last couple of years. We have separated ourselves kind of in 3 groups, but ultimately, we all work together very collaboratively. We do have a current planning division and a long-range planning division, both of which have 2 principal planners and a land planner each. And then our sureties coordinator falls under the current planning area. And then we have some other functions that fall under our assistant planning director, including our preservation planning, Board of Zoning Appeals, and our technical support. Getting into the base budget request for personnel, there's really no changes proposed here. There is one thing I'll bring up later as a program enhancement request to add a new position, but for the base budget request, personnel remains the same. In terms of operations, we are seeing a slight decrease as a result of not having the zoning ordinance fees, the consultant fees still being a part of the budget. So that definitely creates a little bit of a drop. We do have scheduled computer upgrades for all of the planning department staff this year. So it all hits during 1 year. So there is a little bit of an offset because of those additional fees for those needed upgrades. And then we do have a continued emphasis on our professional education, continuing to make sure our planners are well-trained and ready for the next wave of trends and how we address things like affordable housing and transportation. And we want to make sure that we all stay up to date on all of that. There are no budget requests for capital. And then we have 3 program enhancement requests proposed. There is an error in this slide that actually the transportation planner, that's the third one, that's not a one-time cost. We wouldn't just have them for 1 year. So that is an ongoing cost. So the first one being our historic preservation plan. We would seek to reach out for some consultant services related to the historic preservation plan. This is one of the requests we made last year during the budget process. And this plan has not been updated since 2001. It's about 20 years old at this point. And most of the objectives and goals that were created with that plan, we have thoroughly exhausted and reached, and we are ready to really get together with a new strategy to how to strengthen our historic district, given the development pressure that we see in that area today. So this is something that is timely. We are seeing a lot of new development in the historic district that does have some great impacts on it, but also can have some unanticipated impacts. So really updating this plan would allow us to do some public outreach, get citizen comment, really talk about how this district can evolve, but really strengthen itself over time and maintain that historic integrity that helped create it. We also have a request for a Murfreesboro Road plan consultant. This, I know you heard Jonathan mention that they would be looking to dedicate some or request some funding for the Highway 96 corridor. This is in conjunction with this planning request so that we could link transportation, utilities, and land use planning all together to study the Highway 96 corridor between just past Carruthers Parkway all the way to Mac Hatcher, and really study how that corridor will evolve, how it will function better from multiple standpoints, as well as what can be done to help encourage a new land use pattern over time, because we do see the interest in redeveloping and regenerating parts of that corridor. So this is I would say this is a study that we've thought about doing for a long time. We've been a little hesitant because it's a very large undertaking, but together, engineering and planning with the appropriate consultants can definitely get something done in this area. And then we have a third request for a transportation planner. We are currently, both engineering and planning are working with Assistant City Administrator Vernon Girth to identify what the job duties for this position would entail. But as transportation continues to be a top priority for the city and something that we hear from residents that they're concerned about, we think that this is a position that we could dedicate some time to really studying alternative modes of transportation, looking at comprehensive transportation solutions, as well as working with our metropolitan planning organization and going to those meetings and helping facilitate some of the requests that we make to the MPO in terms of ways to get grants and funding for certain projects, and just kind of keeping track of a lot of the records that currently are shared between engineering and planning, but kind of kept, Jonathan Marston does a lot of these duties already, and I know that it's something that we could help have a designated staff member to help with. So that is a request that I would like, everybody to consider over time for sure. So just in summary, it's been a really exciting year for us. We were really excited to get that zoning ordinance and set of subdivision regulations approved by the end of 2019. We really, as I already mentioned, appreciate everybody's hard work on that. I know it was a lot of time, a lot of extra meetings, but I think we can all be very proud of what we accomplished last year. The managed growth and annexation practices are something that we're going to continue to focus on. Annexation requests are not slowing down right now. So this is something that we're going to continue to study and make sure that we are following Envision Franklin policies and strategic growth initiatives. Some of the other things we continue to focus on are a long-term vibrant economy, housing choices and quality of place, and a regional transportation and local mobility. And that transportation and planning position will play into that as well. Our top priorities, again, for fiscal year 21 include that preservation plan and Murfreesboro Road Small Area Plan, in addition to the monitoring and evaluating of Envision Franklin and the zoning ordinance to see where those issues arise. We have a department of very talented and dedicated professionals, many of whom have joined us this year, and we expect to have a really exciting year again.
Any questions, Angie?
Yeah, oh,
Yes, we have a question from Alderman Berger on the phone. If
Okay.
you can grab her real quick. Go ahead, Alderman Berger. Oops, sorry.
Hello?
There we go.
Okay, just want to make sure you can hear me. Emily, hi. You had mentioned the 96 interchange. I'm really concerned with that interchange that's in my ward, and it is probably one of the worst functioning interchanges around that we have. It's in desperate need of repair. Doesn't look good all the time, but also it doesn't really function very well, and we're just adding additional traffic in that area. So when you mentioned the 96 study from Brothers over to McCatcher, how does this play in with working with the state as far as our budget and what we can expect, especially for the interchange? We need improvements. Actually, we need that whole thing rebuilt. So what do you know about that?
Well, a lot of that, I kind of wish Jonathan Marston was still in the room, but a lot of that actually, this plan will help direct the city in request to TDOT. So TDOT would be at the table during the study, but they're going to really look to see what the city has done in terms of studying the corridor first. And then they will take those results and the modeling that we've done as part of the study and determine the need based on those results. So this is something that we would all be at the table together at during the study, but from my understanding, TDOT wouldn't necessarily approve anything prior to us accomplishing and completing the study.
Emily, my question, comment is the historic preservation consultant. I think this is so needed, and I appreciate you all really looking into this, because our historic areas, if we're not careful, they will erode, and we will not have what we thought we have. So this is very timely, maybe a little late, but at least we need to take advantage of the opportunities now that we have in our historic areas, because things are changing throughout not only the downtown, but the surrounding neighborhoods of our downtown, and it's changing the character. So whatever we can do from a professional look at how we can best grow and move forward, but yet maintain who we are. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Emily. I have no questions or comments. I appreciate the informative presentation that you made. And I'm assuming that this is the last of the budget presentations, and we're ready to go into the financial reports. But again, thank you. Should I ask, maybe, let me think. how is the new bride doing?
I'm doing very well. Very well.
Good
thank
deal,
you.
okay. Michael, when you're ready,
It's not letting me unmute you. Yeah, can you unmute yourself? Do you have that ability? No, that was it. It's telling me I'm having connection issues.
And
it won't
Mike,
let me mute and unmute
do
people.
you want to? And Christine?
I mean, that computer's on, if you want to talk into the other one, the one by Christine. Michael, if you want to just talk into it.
I don't need to talk.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no,
I'm sorry, that
yeah,
one's working.
no.
Go ahead.
And again, for those of you who are watching on TV and other means of communication, this is kind of a practice for us. We've never done this before. Christine, you're up.
Well, I certainly can say some introductory comments as Michael is getting the quarterly and monthly reports pulled up, and our comptroller, Mike Lowe, will join us here momentarily. Since this committee last met, we did finish out the month of February, which is an important month in the fiscal year life of the city.
Okay. We could hear Clyde, but we can't hear.
Because he's on the phone. I can't get the computers to, it's unmuted, but I can't get it to do anything.
Can Clyde still talk?
Michael, do you want my phone there?
That's our only other option.
Is that an option?
Pearl's cut out partway through, and then we could hear Clyde fine. I thought we had it fixed, so, yeah, move the phone over.
If that works, put that there, and I'll delete any questions that I have to ask. Which I don't think will hurt anybody's feelings.
Put another phone up there.
So can you hear me if I speak into Alderman Barnhill's phone?
You can hear that one.
Do you hear that? Okay. Well, I'll provide some introductory remarks as we pull up our monthly and quarterly reports. We finished the month of February, which is an important month in the fiscal life of the city. End of February is when the property tax collections are due, and they are collected by the county trustee's office. And we actually received those funds in the last few days that have been remitted to the city. And so that has occurred as typically would be planned. We also, in the month of February, receive information about December sales tax, and that's something that our comptroller will be speaking about in just a moment. And so we did receive good news for our December sales tax. Just earlier today, we received our information for our January sales, which we received that report today. I've only recently, in the last few hours, delivered that report to the city administrator. And while we, of course, are uncertain of what's happening right now, we know that right now sales are not anywhere near normal levels. The January report was a positive report. And we actually, for the month of January sales, and for the next time this committee meets, you'll receive that written report. But January sales were up about 5% over the previous year, which January is typically a low month for sales tax. But I think if I have to give any sort of commentary or context to it, January didn't have any terribly difficult weather that would have kept people from not getting out, or and so we certainly sometimes in January see some interruptions to sales if we have any few days, and typically here would just be a few days of winter interruptions, but we didn't necessarily have that this year. So with the January sales, we are up 3.4% in local option sales tax over the same 7 months last year. However, that's just in preparation for what information we'll be receiving. The difficulties, we won't be receiving any sales tax information about the month of March until we're late in the month of May. In fact, I would not expect us to receive March sales tax information until probably the week after the city administrator gives his budget presentation on May the 14th. So the information is slow to get to us, and but we will have that toward the end of May for March. So with that, I believe our reports are up and we're ready. Yes, ma'am.
Are we anticipating February being a okay month for sales tax?
I don't believe that a lot of we'll see too much interruption for February. We were starting to see, thinking back on February, some of the news was starting to,
Right.
be a little difficult, but it seemed as if February activity will be fairly normal. February is a pretty slow month, but when we look at the whole 12 months of sales, but we certainly in February didn't have too bad of weather.
And the markets were still good.
And the markets were still good, and tourism traffic was the visitors who are business travelers. I think in the month of February, our business travelers were still here, and that we'll probably be able to decipher some impact of interruptions in business traffic once we see March.
Yes.
Michael, do you want to let Mike sit in your place?
Yeah, I can. Let me just.
Thank you.
Mine just popped on. Popped on. I didn't touch anything.
Do we have Mike? Mike, go ahead and make your presentation then.
Yeah, good afternoon. I would like to maybe add a few comments to those that Christine made about the quarterly report, because we'll know more after we do the third quarter report as to where we'll be. But here in the second quarter, it is helpful to look at it because it does let us see where we are currently. And if you look at the general fund, you would have noticed there is a small deficit in the fund at the end of December. And what this is, it's for two reasons. There was a $2.5 million transfer to the debt service fund to help pay off the swap on the 2007 bonds, which we used to help pay expenses on the police headquarters. Also, there was $2.3 million that was transferred to the capital projects fund, and that was to pay the general fund portion of projects that are in the CIP. So both transfers happened in the second quarter. So that's how come you see that number in December. The second item I would like to maybe point out is on property tax, is in 2020, there has been a greater portion going to the debt service fund. And the reason is in the recent bond issues, there's been money that's been spent on police and fire vehicles, as well as on a refunding, which in essence kind of moved up debt service payments so that we'd be able to pay it off sooner. So that's how come a greater portion was needed of the property taxes. The third thing is, like Christine pointed out about local sales tax, it's 3% higher than last year at the end of December. We did have a December number that was 6.5% higher than the previous December, so that would be Christmas sales. And as Christine just said a moment ago, January's number was 5% higher than the previous January. One thing that we had pointed out was higher interest rates were helping interest income. And maybe the thing is, we now see where the Federal Reserve has lowered the Fed funds rate to almost zero. So we expect when investments mature, when we basically put them back out there, they will be at a lower interest rate. As far as development fees, They've all been higher so far this year. If you look at building permit revenue, road impact, facilities tax, and you'll see that again on the monthly reports. So compared to last year, that has been higher. And maybe just the last thing I may point out, it's something we saw before, but the gasoline tax has been 6% higher. So it's been kind of one of those, it's been good news as far as that, but it's like we said earlier, now with travel and things now in the current environment, will we see that hold up? That may have been the points I have. I may turn back to Christine to see if she has something else she'd like to add, but I'll entertain any questions.
And I did appreciate Mike making the comments that he did regarding the timing of transfers to our debt service and to capital project fund. We did make the transfer to the debt service fund toward the end of November, and that was when the refunding was closed, and that we actually terminated the swap that had been outstanding. So that was taken into account in the second quarter of the fiscal year. However, we certainly maintained our liquidity throughout the second quarter. That was planned, and we are actually being very careful with our, as you would imagine, with our liquidity right now in anticipation of any revenue delays. So we're being very careful as a team to make sure that we have the liquidity in place to pay all of our bills and to make our payrolls in our regular schedule. So that's something that we know is very important to you as well. So with that, if you have any questions about the second quarter, we'd be.
I do not have any more questions. Alderman Bransford?
Well, I think I missed the oil gas component of the report. Are we, because we are in a hedge system, right? So because
We have about 40% hedge. We don't hedge all of our fuel.
okay,
We actually have not increased the amount that we hedge in the last several years. That way we don't have,
are we losing or gaining or nothing?
well, as prices decline,
Right.
then we are paying.
Right,
When
more.
prices are increasing, then we have, we have that cushion to help us out. So, in essence, that on about 40% of our fuel needs, we do have that hedge that right now is not to our favor. However, if we ended up in a different environment, it would. But the rest of our fuel we're paying the market rate.
So it's not 100%, which is good.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
It's not a complete hedge.
Thank you. That's my question.
Mike, are you up now?
Yes.
For monthly reports,
Let's go to the monthly report.
sounds good. We do monthly reports so we can see kind of, how things change from the quarterly report to the next month or monthly report to the next monthly report. And what I might emphasize is if you do look at the next month after what we have here is we did talk about the local sales tax being higher by 6.5% in the month of December, 3.1% year-to-date, just kind of like we saw in the quarterly report. We did see that the development fees, building permits, road impact, and facilities, again, are up, even if you look at the next month after the quarterly report. Gasoline taxes, what we had seen before, about 5.5% to 6% higher. And maybe the one new thing I might point out on the monthly reports is the conference center. Is if you look, it actually finished January 2020 with $35,000 of a profit versus the previous year where the profit was essentially half that at $16,000. So I think those are the highlights of the monthly reports. I'd be open to answering any questions that you may have.
Mr. Chair, if I may make a comment on the conference center, and of course, this is, Mike's report's reflective of information that we've received through January. Certainly, we are in communication with the management of the conference center, and the report from them is that the that while for the year so far, they have tracked ahead of the previous year in what is remitted to the two owners, to us in the county. Of course, the month of March it's been devastating for the conference center. There have been some, when conferences have reached out to cancel, they have been working to offer them alternate dates. They've reported that some conferences are able to accommodate alternate dates. Sometimes that does not happen. There have been some monies received by the conference center that were per terms of the contract if they could not meet perhaps a future date. But March has been a very difficult month for the conference center, and they are working with groups that had them booked for the spring, and so certainly it's the same story that we're hearing from other hospitality and business travel businesses. So we know that this is a difficult time for them, but they are working with groups to keep them at the conference center if that is all if possible to do so. And we know how important that business traffic is to our local economy, and where they can accommodate, then we believe that'll be good for the city long term as well.
Each time a new person.
I know, we weren't doing that in between people.
Oh, thank you.
Like a good nurse. You gotta put you on the healthcare board.
And the,
Do we
Yes,
have
sir.
any, what else do we have to come before the committee?
The only other comment I was going to make that was related to the monthly reports was to relate to our hotel motel tax that we
Okay.
report to this committee. Certainly, the story to this committee has been that we've added rooms there's been more hotel development within the city. What we're hearing from our hotels for the month of March is very similar to what we've heard at the conference center, of course. Traffic has decreased significantly. We do, I know that certainly we talk about this during our budget process, but we do not use hotel motel taxes to fund our general fund. We do deposit that. We record those revenues in a separate fund, which is primarily used for capital expenses, capital projects. We have paid on a couple of our park-related acquisitions, but as far as funding our general fund operations, we do not do that from hotel motels. So while it's certainly something that we're monitoring, and we expect to see declines for the month of March in those revenue collections, it does not impact our ability to make payroll or to keep our basic services going.
I know we did that particular fund for Harlingsdale. Do we still owe on that, okay. So that fund then is used to pay off part of that,
The Harlinsdale and
that
the
debt service?
the Eastern Flank acquisition for Eastern Flank Park.
both of those?
Yes, sir. They both, Harlinsdale goes out farther in the future than the Eastern Flank. But then, other than those two acquisitions, we pay for capital. And the Spivey tract.
Christine, Mike, Michael, Angie, any other comments? Well, let me make one. Thank you, Angie. I am sure that you're delighted to be almost through with this. I can't imagine the hair pulling and
pressure.
moving and manipulating and phones in place. But it has been an experience, and we will only improve on this.
Yes.
And going forward with our
Yes.
board meetings,
Yeah.
for the public, if you're watching and listening, this is what we can expect to be able to present to you based upon the situations and the environment that we're in at this particular time. If there's no other comments, I'll entertain it. Well, I may not, but it's just
We can do
adjourn.
that.
We
See
don't
you
have
later.
enough to, we don't have enough to vote to adjourn anyway. We are through.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. See you next.